Yeah, thank you very much also from my side for the invitation and for the opportunity to present my work. And also for the kind introduction. As you might have heard from Volker by now, this is work that was in the works for quite some time and is now recently published. And this is something not on digital ecosystems, as you can see, but it's on a more general topic where I look at price effects of horizontal transactions and merger-like transactions, and use a kind of meta-study approach to study ex post evaluations of horizontal mergers. What was my motivation to actually do that? I mean, when we look at authority decisions on mergers specifically, we have basically two kinds of decision errors that can occur. So false negatives and false positives. And of course, we don't want both of them. So the ideal would be to minimize both of these. And how can we actually do that? Or how can we as academics help the authorities to do that is by a so-called policy learning approach. So these ex post studies that study individual mergers and their effects on prices, efficiency, and so on, labor effects, they are helpful to actually see, okay, what were the results, what were the effects of these mergers. Of course, this is only possible for mergers that were allowed and were conducted. So small disclaimer here. This can help us to see, okay, did a decision error actually occur? And did the merger in fact have negative effects? And what I wanted to do with this meta-study approach, and of course I'm not the first to do that, so there are works by John Quokka, for example, that I build upon. The idea of a meta-study approach is to generate more generalized statements on the effects of such transactions. And yeah, the goal either of those ex post studies or of the meta-study approach can of course never be to turn decisions around. Even if we find some decision errors that occurred, it can never be the goal to turn these around. This is not possible, of course, but the idea is to learn from them and improve decision making over time and for the next time, and maybe if necessary even change competition policy. And yeah, with my meta study, I want to combine the knowledge of several ex post studies that were conducted, that I looked at, that I analyzed, and yeah, follow this policy learning approach that evaluates the effectiveness of competition law in general, and in terms of whether the final decision effectively protected competition and minimized decision errors of both kinds. And yeah, I did that under the premise of 3 research questions. In general, I wanted to see, okay, are there some groups of goods, so sectors, industry, however you want to call them, are there some groups that are especially prone to price increases post-merger? And even though I mentioned some additional merger effects beforehand in my talk already, like efficiency effects, labor effects, and so on, in my meta study, I only looked at price effects of horizontal mergers. So this is important to notice. I did not look at remedies as well or divestitures, but I will discuss a little bit on that further on. So are there some sectors, some groups of goods that are especially prone to price increases after horizontal transactions? So are there any sectors where competition authorities should investigate especially hard? The second research question was, is there additionally to these certain groups of goods, these sectors, are there determinants of size or importance of a transaction that can determine the post-merger price effect? So what determines do I mean? Which do I use? Something like relative company sizes. So is it like a merger of equals, or is a firm, a relatively big firm, merging with a relatively small firm? So this could be interesting, right? I looked at the transaction volume, which tells us something about the importance of a merger for a market overall, I guess. And something like combined turnovers post-transaction and so on. And the third research question, and the one I want to focus the second part of my talk today, is regarding market concentration and the impact of market concentration on post-merger price effects. And for that, I used variables such as pre- and post-merger HHI, the market shares, and the difference in HHI that occurred due, or the effects of HHI occurred through the merger. I said I focus on or I use a meta-study approach. This means, of course, I have to select the ex post studies that like in the first place analyzed the mergers, right? And I included here some of the criteria I used to select the ex post studies. Again, extended from the Quokka works. He has a very nice book where he includes a lot of this work, but I wanted to go further than him. And what were the criteria that I used to select these ex post studies? I only wanted to look at horizontal transactions, and this is not only horizontal mergers, but something also like code-share agreements in the flight sector or in the airline sector, for example. And however, to ensure the comparability of results and to make it possible to generalize actual effects, I needed, of course, to use only ex post studies that used econometric methods. Most of the papers used the difference in difference method, of course, to look at merger price effects. What I did exclude were some papers that only used, for example, interview-based approaches or something like that. What I also excluded were papers that studied waves of mergers. It's very prevalent in the banking sector, for example, where a lot of papers exist on merger waves, for example. So I did also excluded that here. Additionally, I also included the banking sector in general, as well as hospitals and railroads, because those are markets that are highly regulated, and we do not necessarily see natural competition, I would say. So therefore, you never know if the prices pre and post merger are actually due to competition, or if it's because of the regulation. Therefore, I excluded these sectors here. Other than Quokka, or different to Quokka, I did not have any special selection criteria in regards to the type of contribution. So I included published papers in journals, as well as also contributions by and for competition authorities, if in the rare case that they actually did some ex post studies or had them made for them, I included those as well. And I also included all the jurisdictions I could find, actually. So there are cases included, a lot of actually of in the US, of course, but even some in the European Union. So this also broadens the approach of Quokka. What I also have to say is I took all of the results and the assumptions as well, and the methods used in the papers as given. I did not discuss or analyze some data limitations that might have been in the ex post studies, some other shortcomings due to methods used or something like that. I only used the results after choosing them according to the criteria I just presented. So to come to some general results, overall, I selected 52 retrospective studies according to the criteria I just mentioned. And those retrospective studies discussed overall 82 cases of horizontal transactions. And out of these 82 transactions, I took 207 price effects that were mentioned there. So we see some of the retrospective studies, they used more than one case, or they discussed more than one case. And in some cases, it was also the case that we see more than one price effect per merger or per horizontal transaction. Because what the authors sometimes did is they looked at different regional markets, for example, and so we overall came to 207 price effects that were given in these 52 retrospective studies. And now to the first general results. Okay, we see here that in 52% of the instances, actually the prices apparently increased post-merger or horizontal transactions. So more than half of the price effects were positive, so prices increased. In 71 instances, the prices decreased post-merger, and in 22 instances, the authors did not really find a clear result. What does that mean? Okay, we see no effect of the merger on prices, or the authors report no effect of the merger on prices. What is also important to say right here, that's why I already took the 52% of price increases post-merger here. This normally one would expect to not have these many price increases, or preferably no price increases at all, because all of these mergers that were discussed in the ex post studies were analyzed by the competition authorities and were not prohibited, or were allowed with some remedies or something like that. But all of them were able to actually be conducted. And so the competition authorities did not see any competition problems with that, or at least to say it in a very easy way. Of course, it's not that easy in competition authority practice, but in general, one would not expect to be that many to see that many price increases. What I did next, and as I already mentioned, is I divided the cases in some groups of goods. As we see, okay, some were not really groups, and casinos and cement only was one case respectively, for example. But for flights, for example, and gasoline or groceries or media products, we see, okay, there are a lot of cases, or even, I mean, a number of cases, and a lot of price effects that could be discussed. What is important to say here is that due to the data availability, the number of analyzable price effects basically changed from research question to research question. So this was a big challenge for me when I was doing the work and the analysis, because I was kind of relying on the information that was given by the ex post studies, because some of the cases were really old, and some of the ex post studies already were quite some years old, and I was trying to be as exact as I could be, and I tried to use the data also on the other variables like HHIs and market shares and so on that were given by the ex post studies, because I wanted to use the numbers and the variables they used actually, so the same database basically that they used for their assessment, right? So this made it a bit challenging to do like a real econometric analysis, but we will come to that maybe later on. Instead, what I first did was look at the mean price effects, basically in the groups of goods. Here we see, okay, of course, the standard deviation is not possible to see for cases where we only have one merger that were actually analyzed. But what we see in the groups of goods where we have more than one price effect or more than one case that was analyzed by the ex post studies is in general, we mostly see price increases. And this makes sense because we saw that in the general results already. This is in line with the general results on the slides before, and this is also quite consistent with some recent research on the stringency of antitrust enforcement, basically, because what we see here are price increases post-merger. However, most times the price increases are not that high, I would say. So there is work from 2023 where the stringency of antitrust enforcement in the US is actually analyzed. And we see there that the antitrust authorities are likely to only block mergers where they expect a price increase of more than 8 to 9% due to the merger. And so this is basically in line with my results here, that, okay, it makes sense that these mergers were not blocked if we have this range of stringency, and they say, okay, underneath 10% price increase, basically there might not be that big of a problem that antitrust authorities see. Here we see the pairwise correlation. So as I mentioned in my slide for the research questions, I took a lot of determinants into consideration to assess the importance of size or importance of a transaction, as well as market concentration. And what I did here was the pairwise correlations of these variables. And of course, especially interesting is the last line with the price effects, right? However, what we see here is not a particularly strong correlation between price effects and the other variables. What we instead see is a higher correlation between some of the variables themselves. And I think this is to be expected, of course. I think it makes sense that post and pre-merger HHI are kind of correlated. And of course, it makes sense that combined and difference in turnovers are correlated somehow. So this is again a problem with or a challenge with the data set. Additionally, we have omitted variable bias. We have problems with the data availability due to the reasons I already mentioned, and we have the heterogeneity of determinants. So therefore, I was unfortunately not able to do a real regression analysis. I tried it. There were basically no results. So this is what I stick to here to report some first general results. However, I did go a little further with some of the variables mentioned here. And what I want to do now is look into my further analysis of market concentration variables and basically how I answered my research question 3. So at first, here we see the summary statistics for market concentration. Why is market concentration so interesting here for us? Because these are important variables that are used by competition authorities worldwide to assess mergers ex ante, right? And let's see what the mergers were all about that we're discussing here. Again, you see these varying numbers of observations, which is again due to data availability, and I think proves my point of the not possible regression analysis. However, what we see here, we look at the mean values, for example, for the pre-merger HHI, is that we in general are talking about already highly concentrated markets. When we look at the FTC's approach, where we have according to the FTC, we have highly concentrated markets when we talk about HHIs higher than 1,800 points. So the mean value is right above that. Of course, we see some mergers in the data set where we have not that highly concentrated markets. You see in the minimum value is just short of 600 points. So that's that. But in general, we talk about already highly concentrated markets pre-merger, and this, of course, increases post-merger, so they're even more highly concentrated. We also see in the maximum values here that we discussed also some monopolies. So there was a maximum market HHI of 10,000 points. And what is also interesting is, again, following the approach of the FTC, which says that if we see HHI effect of more than 100 points post-merger, we are thinking of mergers that enhance market power in already highly concentrated markets. And that's what we see here as well in the difference in HHI variable, which is where the mean value is almost 800 points. We also see some mergers that decrease HHI quite considerably, I would say, but this is, of course, these are some outliers. And yeah, now that we have determined that we were talking about already highly concentrated markets that even became more concentrated due to the merger, what I did next was some graphic evaluation, basically, or looked at a correlation between the changes in HHI or difference in HHI, as I called it, due to the merger and the price effects. I was able to analyze 80 price effects here. So I had 80 price effects where I also had the information on the changes in HHI. And as we see here, we see a little bit of an, I don't know if I would call it an outlier because it's very consistent with theory, but we see one case that reduced HHI actually, the case I already mentioned in the slide before. And but this merger also decreased prices. So this is consistent with theory. This is what we would expect. We also see some results that are in line with theory, that in the cases where the changes in HHI were smaller, so between 0 and 1,000 points, we see some price decreases as well, whereas they become more seldom when we look at the changes in HHI that are higher. However, we have one very strong outlier with the increase of HHI of 3,200 points and a price decrease of 23% overall, which we see in the right corner. This is the case of Kaiser Cement and Lone Star Industries, which was happening at the Hawaiian cement market. And that was happening in 1985. And the authors of the ex post study that were discussing this result were mentioning maybe some efficiency effects that might have led to these price effects. But you can never be sure, of course. It was just some theories that I have. However, this, of course, strongly skews the results that we see here. But in general, one could say that we can cautiously support the theory that in already concentrated markets, and when they get even more concentrated, that there might be a slight positive correlation between increases in market concentration and price increases. So this would also be the result or the answer to my research question 3, that we can slightly support that theory analyzing the results of those ex post studies. And again, this is also in line with some recent literature published by Koltai et al. Also in JCLE. They find that the greater the initial market power of a firm, the greater is the risk actually that post-merger in already concentrated markets, we have a stronger impediment of effective competition. So again, my results support theirs or the other way around. We can discuss that, but I'm quite happy that some others also came to some similar results. And after discussing the research question number 3 in more detail, I also want to give you the general results of the paper overall. So when we look at the research question 1, I did not find any strong indication that the sector or the group of goods, as I called them, has an effect on the direction and the strength of prices post-merger. I saw some results where in some sectors we only had price increases or only price decreases, and most of the sectors showed mixed results. So the group of good is not a strong indicator of that. However, what I did find and what I just discussed is a slight positive correlation between increased market concentration and post-merger price increases, especially in already concentrated markets, and especially in cases where we see a merger of equals of very big firms. So larger and more significant transactions are to be analyzed more in depth and tend to have more negative effects on prices post-merger. And I want to come back to the 52% of the analyzed price effects that showed an actual price increase post-merger. I would say this suggests some room for improvement of the decisions and merger decision accuracy. And already coming to the policy implications I would take for that is I would encourage to have more ex post analysis of cases, not just merger cases, but also abuse cases and so on. And the meta-study approach can also help to adopt more general results of those, I would say. And this hopefully can help competition authorities to get a greater accuracy in merger evaluations and minimize decision errors, basically. As I already mentioned, I did not include divestitures or remedies, for example, in my analysis. Those would also be some ideas for future research building on this, what I just presented here. However, we again have the challenges of data availability and so on. So I'm going to see if there's actually something in there or if there's something possible here. And this would be the result of especially my research question number 3, but also a general overview of my paper overall. And now I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss future research ideas as well.